Extroverts of Reddit, what questions do you have for introverts? Why do you always feel like you're the weird one in the room? Everyone's weird, we're just weird on the outside. But we won't know that. We always feel so different from extroverts, like we don't belong, at least for me. Everyone belongs. Everyone has a seat at the table, and if anyone tries to tell you otherwise, tell that MF you don't wanna sit at their table anyway. The situation isn't always that someone isn't giving us a seat at the table. It's more like I don't wanna be at the table in the first place, I just wanna have my separate area away from everyone. Don't get me wrong. We don't hate you or anything. We just feel uncomfortable with a lot of social situations. I know introverts who are beyond vocal on social media and in forums, constantly posting, discussing, arguing, praising, crusading, etc. And I know introverts who are never posting on it, keep to themselves both IRL and online. Therefore, does this make the first mentioned people's digital extroverts? A lot of times what some introverts, like me, prefer is to plan our thoughts because we don't like making mistakes online. We can just delete the text before we send it and start over, but conversations don't work like that. This is me. This also answers the other question about why it's so hard to respond to a text. It's because I overthink almost everything I type, and I like to plan out and edit my texts, comments, posts so much it takes me an hour just to reply to one person. Even then, I'm aware that there are still mistakes that make me regret sending it because I think it sounds stupid or something. I know it's not rational, but I do like having the time to properly plan out my response and everything. Especially when I have a lot of thoughts that I want to convey as perfectly as I possibly can. That's why I'm so much better at expressing myself through writing than verbally. Is there a way that I can make plans where it doesn't make you uncomfortable, want to flake? It's so disappointing when people cancel plans on me frequently. I realize that it's harder for some people to spend that social energy. I just also want to be able to spend time with you. Having an activity makes me more comfortable and less likely to bail. I almost always suggest playing pool or darts or Dave and Buster's. I second this. If you say we are going somewhere to just hang out, I'm gonna look for a way to escape. But if we are actively doing something, I'm on board. Even if it's a passive thing like the movies. Idle chit chat is not our idea of a fun day out. I third this. If you really want to just chit chat, then come over, or invite me to your place, and we'll chat while playing some games or watching a movie, but I ain't going to the bar or the park just to chit chat. Why do you not like fear phone calls? We're already friends. You already know me. Why does a phone call freak you out so much? And we have to resort to crafting entire novels back and forth to discuss something that's easier communicated over the phone. For most of us, it's the spontaneity, the feeling of being put on the spot. Some also associate that feeling of being put on the spot with much more negative things, like emergencies or punishment, but that's a bit more rare. I just hate phone calls because they catch me unexpectedly at a time when I have already planned to be in my alone zone, like when I'm preparing to go to bed, or when I'm watching YouTube. Before every kind of social interaction, I prefer to have some sort of preparation. Put myself in the zone. Know who's gonna be there, what they will talk about, how I will potentially respond. But phone calls are just such a big fat surprise. Plus I can't see the other person's face, so A, it's harder to understand what they're saying, and B, I can't tell what faces they're making. So it's harder to know if they are being sarcastic, or think I'm a D, or if they are amused. Basically, I just hate not knowing. Plus it probably has to do with the fact that I don't trust my social skills enough. I can't rely on myself to craft perfectly socially acceptable responses on the spot. Hence my preference to have some preparation before going into it. Okay, so I don't know if this is an introvert thing or just a me thing, but I think that the reason I hate phone calls so much is because I'm a very visual person. I pay really close attention to body language, facial expression, etc. when I'm talking with people. Like, not even intentionally. That's just where my mind goes during conversations. So, when I'm making a phone call, All of those visual cues are just gone and I feel so much more awkward and uncomfortable because it feels harder to read the conversation, if that makes sense. I think that's why I have no problem FaceTiming someone but absolutely hate making a phone call. How can I tell if you're being shy or you just don't like me, don't want to talk to me? This is a hard one. For me, small talk is hard, so I often sit in silence, sweating, trying to come up with a question to ask or something to say to someone even though I like them. I smile and nod and try to convey that I'm listening. However, when I don't like or don't want to talk to someone, I answer questions briefly and don't try to continue the conversation at all. I may smile to be polite, but I don't make much eye contact. I don't ever reach out to someone via text if I don't want to talk to them. If they contact me, I just answer the questions and make shallow small talk. How are you? Good. How are you? Etc. Everyone is different though. I hope this was a decent answer. Exact same here. I do not know how to start a conversation, so I sweat. Around my friends. Around complete strangers and new people I am okay. Around girls, don't even talk about it. Try starting a conversation based on something you noticed that I like, but be prepared to actually discuss it. Don't be afraid to admit you don't know everything about it though. For example, Boogaruth. Is that tattoo a slime from the Dragon Quest series? If I would rather not have a conversation with you, I'll say, and keep going. If you're someone I've thought about talking to, I'll say, oh neat, you know Dragon Quest, and then I have an opening with you that we can talk about. I won't hold a conversation if I don't think I'm going to get something stimulating out of it. It's pointless. Why is it so hard to respond to a text? Sometimes it's too hard to find correct words. I, as an introvert, often read my answer over and over again before sending, just to find out that it's dumb or too bold or just annoying in my opinion. So I change it many times before I decide, nah, I cannot communicate properly, I'll just leave it. I'm an introvert but I always text back. Phone calls on the other hand. Don't even start with video calls. How can you have professions that require public speaking but then not speak at all in social situations? Not all of us can do that, but for those who can, my guess is that there is a big difference between presenting information on a subject you know well, in a situation where it's unlikely you will have to speak out of your comfort zone, versus open-ended conversation with people you may or may not know well, who could potentially end up requiring your engagement on any number of topics out of nowhere. It's also possible both scenarios are equally terribly draining, and the reason they can't do the second is because they already spent all their energy on the first. I work in B2B sales, and my job is to travel and have meetings and presentations. I'd classify myself as a social introvert. I have no problems with social interactions and stepping out of my comfort zone. But when I'm done doing that, all I want to do is go home and recharge without people bothering me. Because giving a prepared presentation with no interruptions is different than interaction, in my experience. It's also one of the few times extroverts shut up and listen instead of not letting you finish a sentence. How on earth do you deal with staying home? Quarantine is not doing me any good ATM. We, introverts, usually have many interests you can do at home. Reading, painting, writing, playing instruments, or even exercising without judgmental stares of other people. It's heaven. Can confirm, especially with the instruments bit. Throw in a bit of PC gaming and chess and that's my dream couple of weeks, with nobody to bother me. I loved quarantine. Less of what I don't like doing being around people, more of what I do like doing. Spending time by myself. When I take you under my wing, effectively adopt you and make sure you are noticed for your badassness. Do you know how much I love you? No, not really actually. At least, when speaking for myself, I don't really think about that. If I'd realize that every time a more extrovert person does that for me, I would feel way less insecure. For me, it's more my insecurities that make me introverted than actually being an introvert. When I feel good, I'm quite outgoing. Edit. Thanks to this thread I now know that I'm actually ambivert. Really ambivert. Did you ever consider that you might be an ambivert and not introvert? I just looked that one up and the answer is yes. Most definitely. I'm sometimes walling myself off from other people to charge myself into hanging out with them and to be social, if that makes sense. Why can't you just tell those close to you when you need some time or space? If you know your friend is more extroverted than you, they aren't going to just magically know when you have reached your social limits. But it doesn't mean they don't care about them and want to respect them. Often we do and people don't accept it. They think we're being antisocial. Also, we think others should be empathetic enough to realize that we're not having a good time and take our non-verbal cues to leave us alone. Words are not the only way of communicating. It doesn't just have to be in the middle of a social event. It could just be that this week's trip to the pub is one too many for you. If you are being criticized for being you, that doesn't make you bad. That makes your friends crap friends and says you need to pick some better ones. Some of us extroverted folks do understand that other people have different social thresholds. Maybe it's time to find some of them in your life. Additionally, I think exclusively expecting others to be mind readers on every occasion is a bit of an unfair expectation. However, on the other hand, I do also agree that there certainly are some overly social or extroverted individuals who could try harder to pay attention to how their more introverted friends are coping with any one situation. At the end of the day, your comfort is your responsibility. Your friends should just be trying their best to help, but you can't expect them to know everything. Only you know what is in your head. And if you don't share it, that's your choice. However, rather than negatively judging those who don't have the ability to mind read, perhaps you should prioritize time with the friends who can understand your body language or are aware of a sudden change in your behavior that indicates your discomfort. I'm sorry that that hasn't always been your experience from those around you though. That sucks. We know that not all extroverts are like this, but all it takes is one such experience and then we just expect the same results most times. I would never blame anyone for not understanding that I need some space, even though I'm being very unclear about it. But we would appreciate it if people would realize that not all people live or like to live the same social life. Try to look at things from their perspective. I think you'll agree with me on this. You seem like a very reasonable person. For any introvert watching this video, as an introvert myself, this book, Quit, The Power of Introverts in a World That Can't Stop Talking, shared a lot of helpful tips for introvert to find our peace and confidence in life. I hope this can help more people like me, especially the younger introverts who is constantly questioning themselves, whether they are abnormal as our society kept telling them.